Everybody seems to have a different answer for when Adventure Time really got serious. Some people point to the Lich, some remember the very first Mushroom War reveal, but a lot of people connect the change to Adamuto eventually taking over the storyboarding of the show. So I went back through the early seasons because none of those answers really felt complete to me. In my opinion, the show had already started changing before Muto became showrunner, and even the Lich only really explains part of it. Then once I laid all the episodes out, I kept seeing two changes. The writers started following up on consequences, and then they gave the old jokes enough history to hurt just a little bit. Marceline's song with the Ice King shows just how far they've taken both ideas. So I want to go back to the earlier episodes in order to find the closest thing this show has to a point of no return. And I think we can get pretty close. Weirdly enough, it starts with a group of frozen businessmen. In season 1, the writers mostly treat Oob like a giant toy box. Finn and Jake can walk into a new kingdom and meet a creature we've never even seen before. 11 minutes later, and they've solved its problems and gone home. The writers don't explain much because the randomness was the appeal of Adventure Time this early on. Candy people live near vampires and one of the mountains has a face. You get to accept it pretty fast. Then Finn and Jake find 4 men in office clothes inside an iceberg during the episode Business Time. Finn and Jake are just melting chunks of ice because they want materials for a dock. They keep finding old junk in there, the kind of stuff that looks a lot closer to our world than theirs, if you think about it. Then Jake thaws out the businessmen, and the writers move straight into the joke. The guys just love work, and Finn and Jake hate work. Within a few minutes, they've outsourced adventuring to a tiny corporate army, but nobody stops to ask where these men came from. However, in early Adventure Time, that's the part you just gotta love about it. Finn and Jake don't end up treating this iceberg like some archaeological site, because to them, this is just a normal day. Watching Business Time now, you can see the crew kind of testing an idea that they haven't explained just quite yet. That Ooh might just be a fantasy world built on top of our own. Those businessmen could be survivors from the world before it changed, although the episode never confirms their origin. That last part is worth keeping honest, that we get a clue in the episode Business Time, but at this point, the writers haven't even named the Mushroom War on screen yet. And once the businessmen are gone, Finn and Jake move on. Neither of them changes, and nobody follows the discovery up in the next episode. So the past is there, but Finn and Jake don't have to do anything with it just quite yet. Then the Lich shows up. He actually first shows up only for a few seconds in the episode His Hero, during Billy's song about his old adventures. Billy punches this huge undead monster and saves the world. At the same time, it feels like one more exaggerated story about how cool Billy used to be. Then we get to the episode Mortal Folly. Princess Bubblegum has a vision of the Lich while she's meditating with Finn and Jake. She takes them inside the tree above the Candy Kingdom and shows them his body trapped in amber. Billy defeated him years ago, and Bubblegum has clearly prepared for the chance that he might return. She gives Finn and Jake gems that protect their minds. Of course, the Lich ends up escaping, so she sends Finn after him with Billy's gauntlet. Finn is now dealing with somebody else's old problem. Remember, the Lich technically had a history before this episode, even if it was for just a few seconds. Bubblegum knows what he can do, and she knows where Billy left his prison. Now Finn is dealing with the history. Rebecca Sugar and Adamuto also ended the episode with a problem that won't fit inside one 11-minute slot. That's right, this is the first 2-part episode in the entirety of Adventure Time. Ice King follows Finn and Jake because he wants permission to marry Bubblegum, but he eventually drops her into the Lich's well of power, which melts most of her body. Then we pick back up in part 2, Mortal Recoil, with the Lich possessing what the doctors managed to save. Finn and Ice King defeat the Lich's possession, and the doctors rebuild Bubblegum with the candy biomass they have left. There isn't enough to restore her usual body, so she comes back as a 13-year-old girl. Then the credits roll, with her still being 13. Remember that because her very next appearance in season 3, in the episode Too Young, she's still 13. Finn now finally thinks that he has a chance with her, and the Earl of Lemongrab takes the throne because the Candy Kingdom considers her too young to rule now. Bubblegum eventually has to use more candy biomass to restore her normal form and take the kingdom back. But this is the first time that the writers carry her condition into another episode and build its whole conflict around what just happened. So now we know that the writers have started keeping track of what happened beforehand. One team can leave a character in a different place, and another team can pick that up weeks later. Once you've seen them follow one thing up, you start wondering whether any weird background detail might come back. And the people drawing those episodes had a lot more control over the writing than you might expect. And in order to understand that mysteriously cryptic message, let me tell you how Adventure Time works. You see, Adventure Time didn't hand its artist a finished script with every line locked in. The story team usually made a short outline with the main beats of the episode. Then, a pair of storyboard artists expanded that outline into the actual episode. They wrote the dialogue dialogue and worked out the acting, right down to how long a quiet moment should sit before somebody ruined it with something stupid. Pendleton Ward said that each board artist put some of their own personality into the characters. And looking back, you can actually see that quite clearly. The art styles of Finn and Jake can somewhat drastically change between episode to episode, but that's a good thing. So then I started checking the credits because the same names kept showing up around the episodes that I remembered the most. Rebecca Sugar and Adam Muto boarded Mortal Folly. I'm probably gonna butcher this last name, but while Jesse Moynihan and Cole Sanchez handled Mortal Recoil, Rebecca Sugar and Adam Muto later made the episode What Was Missing. For the episode I Remember You, Rebecca Sugar worked with Cole Sanchez. Kent Osborne and Sambale Xylophone boarded both halves of Holly Jolly Secrets. All of those episodes live in the same world, but the teams don't sound identical. The change feels gradual because different artists keep finding new things the format can handle. Rebecca Sugar could take a character's ugliest feelings and put it into a song that still sounded like something they'd make up in their bedroom. Adam Muto had been working with Pendleton Ward since the pilot era and understood the show's timing. Other board teams pushed the mythology or found stories and characters who used to just sit in the background. So we can rule out one easy explanation when we check the production timeline. Pendleton Ward stepped down as showrunner during season 5, with Adam Muto taking over. Mortal Folly, What Was Missing, and Holly Jolly Secrets had already aired by then. I Remember You had too. So Muto helped shape the show long before he ran it, of course, but the early change came from the larger crew learning what Ooh could hold. And by season 3, they were giving the characters history that Finn probably knew nothing about. Then, of course, we start getting more backstories to more characters, or at least subtle hints to them. At the start of the episode of What Was Missing, the Door Lord steals personal items from Finn, Jake, BMO, and Princess Bubblegum. Marceline just ends up joining the chase, but we eventually learn she didn't lose anything. She just wanted an excuse to spend time with the group. To get their stuff back, they have to open a magic door with a song that comes from a genuine place. That setup sounds like a normal excuse for an Adventure Time musical episode. It's kind of funny because one of my very first YouTube videos ever, I don't even know if it's still up, it's probably not, but if you can find it, kudos. I made a lyric video to the song that they sing in this episode. Very poorly made on, I think it was Windows Movie Maker, but it's kind of cool that it's just all come full circle at this point. But you probably remember the scene. Marceline starts singing and begins with some insults, and the song slowly gives away how hurt she really is. Bubblegum reacts like she has heard some version of this argument before. Then later we find out she kept the old shirt that Marceline gave her. Rebecca Sugar and Adam Muto never spell out when they became close or what broke between them, at least at this point in Adventure Time, but their behavior tells you that there was a before. Rebecca Sugar said that she wanted the episode to focus on honesty. While working through Marceline and Bubblegum scenes, she noticed they sounded like exes and pitched that history to Adam Muto and Pendleton Ward, and the crew went with it. But now the scene and what Marceline is saying actually matches up to what we're seeing on screen. Marceline isn't mad at a random princess. Bubblegum isn't confused by the intensity. They know exactly how to get under each other's skin, and this is the first time that we see it. During season 1, we usually learn about a character when Finn meets them. Rebecca Sugar and Adam Muto trust us to arrive late here. Marceline and Bubblegum had their own relationship before this adventure. Obviously, something went wrong between them, and neither one has dealt with it cleanly since then. Princess Bubblegum keeping that old shirt tells us plenty without needing a flashback. The full turn comes a few episodes later. In fact, you can watch What Was Missing as a funny musical adventure and miss most of the subtext. Afterward, though, you start paying attention to how these characters talk around things. A few episodes later, and the writers trust us once again with the Ice King, and that comes in the episode Holly Jolly Secrets. Most of this episode is spent with just Finn and Jake messing around. Jake finds the Ice King's old video diaries at the dump, and Finn decides that they must contain some huge evil secret, so he and Jake settle in with BMO and start watching them. Most of the tapes are just embarrassing. Ice King rambles about his life and shows off his penguins. It's exactly the kind of private nonsense that you wouldn't want anybody laughing at, and when he realizes that they have the tapes, he attacks the treehouse with an army of snowmen. For a while, we're just watching a Christmas special about Finn and Jake invading an old man's privacy, but then the last tape starts. A human man looks into the camera and introduces himself as Simon Petrikov. He's an antiquarian, and he bought a strange crown from a dock worker in Scandinavia. He put it on as a joke. The crown gave him visions, and when he came back to himself, his fiancée Betty was terrified of him. Simon keeps recording as the crown changes him. His skin turns blue as his body gets colder. Worse, he can feel his mind slipping away. For the first time, we have a name for the person under the Ice King. Simon came from a recognizable human world. He had a field of study and a person he planned to marry. The crown took those things from him, one piece at a time. For now, we only see Simon's human life before Marceline and the ruined city come later in the episode I Remember You, and the writers still haven't explained the Mushroom War in full. We do learn one thing for certain though: the Ice King used to be human, and this is huge because we've just spent the last 3 seasons laughing at him. We've seen him kidnap princesses and write terrible fanfiction because he's lonely. So I mean, yeah, the writers can continue to make these jokes after this episode, but now we hear something else that's deeper than that. Simon calls Betty his princess on the tape, and then from then on, Ice King's obsession with princesses reads like a damaged echo of Betty. The writers, of course, never confirmed that as the only reason for his behavior, but the association is pretty hard to miss. Finn and Jake react differently too. Once they finish the tape, they don't celebrate finding his secret, they genuinely feel bad for him and quietly return the diaries. This is kind of the point where I can't really imagine the show going back. After Mortal Recoil, Bubblegum has to live with a new situation, and after Holly Jolly's Secrets, we remember old Ice King scenes way differently. You can go back to an old Ice King episode, see the exact same joke, and feel worse for him than you did the very first time that you probably watched it when you were 10 years old. So now we can't really watch those old jokes as innocently anymore. Then Rebecca Sugar and Cole Sanchez pushed that feeling much further in the episode I Remember You. I Remember You has one of the most Adventure Time premises possible. Ice King wants Marceline to help him write a song that will impress princesses. He arrives with pages torn from an old scrapbook because he thinks that they might make good lyrics. Marceline agrees to help, and the session falls apart almost immediately. Ice King starts with a song about bubblegum, then his loneliness takes over and so do his ice powers. Marceline tells him to stop acting crazy. He shoves her. Then he looks scared, like part of him knows that he might have crossed a line, even though he can't understand why. Marceline still wants him around though. She's furious with him, and she misses him at the exact same time. When she calls him Simon, he has no idea who she's talking about. Marceline looks through the scrapbook pages and finds a photo of herself as a child. Simon wrote a message on it while the crown was taking over his mind. He asks her to forgive whatever he does after he loses himself. Ice King looks at the message and sees song lyrics, so he starts playing. Marceline sings Simon's apology with the person he became, and he doesn't understand a single word of it. Finn and Jake just watch from the outside, confused, because they know Simon existed, but they don't know what Marceline lost. Then we see the flashback. A young Marceline sits alone in the wreckage of a city. Simon finds her and tries to calm her down. He finds a stuffed bear inside a destroyed toy store and brings it to her. This is Hambo. Now we can connect the pieces. Simon survived into the aftermath of the Mushroom War. Marceline knew him before the crown erased his memory entirely. The stuffed animal she's carried for centuries came from him. The Ice King spends this entire episode trying to write a silly song about princesses. By the end, he's pretty much singing an apology from a man who can't deliver it himself. Ice King misunderstanding the note creates the sad part. That's usually what people mean when they say Adventure Time became more than a kid's cartoon, or at least when it changed. But calling it that sells kids' cartoons a little short. Adventure Time technically stayed a kid's show. It trusted those younger viewers with memory loss and grief, then wrapped those ideas in an 11-minute story about 2 weird musicians annoying each other. Cartoon Network aired the episode less than a year after Holly Jolly Secrets, and across those 2 episodes, the writers turned the Ice King from a recurring gag into one of the most painful characters in the entire series, and he still gets to be funny after that, as the Ice King. The entire Adventure Time crew built this change across 4 early seasons. In the episode Business Time, we get the first hint that Ooh grew out of our world. In fact, the entire season 1, you can kind of see in the background that there are hints of some artifacts that are from our world. At the end of season 2, Bubblegum carries the damage from Mortal Recoil into the episode Too Young. Marceline and Bubblegum bring an older relationship into the episode What Was Missing, one that began long before Finn got there. In the episode Holly Jolly Secrets, we meet the human underneath the Ice King, and I Remember You connect Simon to Marceline and the ruins around them. Those episodes aired between May 2011 and October 2012. The writers and board artists kept the random comedy during that stretch and added enough context for the jokes to mean 2 things at once. If I had to choose one episode, I gotta choose Holly Jolly Secrets. That's really where we learn something we can't put back. Like, you cannot deny what you saw in the episode Holly Jolly Secrets. Princess Bubblegum eventually returns to her usual body, and people rebuild destroyed places all the time in Ooh. But once you know Simon is in there, every later Ice King scene reminds you of him. In fact, I remember where I was when I first watched this episode. That little picture of Simon and Betty in the background, I could have sworn that Bigfoot had had something to do with it. I think we all did. Then I Remember You delivers the emotional payoff, and it's probably the episode most people remember crying over. We met Simon in Holly Jolly Secrets, so when Marceline mourns him, we know who she lost. So Adventure Time truly changed, in my opinion, at the end of season 3, and then hammered it home to the point of no return at the end of season 4. And after that, A Land of Ooze starts to feel a little less random. You're looking at the same Candy Kingdoms and broken buildings, only now you're kind of wondering who was there before Finn. Of course, after season 4, because we all know what happens before Finn, but I'm curious as to what episode did it for you, because I know Holly Jolly Secrets won't be everybody's answer. Maybe it was the Lich. Maybe I Remember You was the first one that really hit you. Either way, let me know in the comments. I'm going to be trying to get back into this once again. You know the drill. So if you like Adventure Time and other cartoons, because I'm going to be covering more stuff eventually, hit the subscribe button. But as always, stay adventurous.